Welcome to a new Daily Top Askreddit video. Today's topic.
Was there anyone who tried to warn us about something that happened but we didn't listen? Who? In 2005, Courtney Love was asked what advice she'd give young, up-and-coming actresses. She said, if Harvey Weinstein invites you to a private party at his Four Seasons hotel room, don't go, and for whatever reason, you didn't see her in many movies after that. See also, Johnny Rotten mentioning that he spoke about Jimmy Savile being a pedophile years before. It was uncovered, although it was actually very well known across the BBC. Johnny Rotten was the only one with enough balls, and a, don't give a shit what people think, attitude, to say it as he saw it. People had made accusations, but who was going to listen to mentally ill juvenile delinquents and crippled children? If you haven't already read it, I really recommend, In Plain Sight, The Life and Lies of Jimmy Savile. He literally flaunted his pedophilia, and the people who could have done something turned a blind eye, or laughed it off as just Jimmy being Jimmy. It's frightening how he got away with it all. A cunning, evil man. Didn't Cameron Diaz also make a similar statement on a talk show? It was well known that Weinstein was a creep. It just wasn't well known how much of a creep he really was. Whitney Cummings joked about it in a roast once, and there was a 30 Rock joke also making fun of Weinstein. It's like how everyone knew that Kevin Spacey was gay and liked younger guys, but no one knew the full extent. And Seth MacFarlane famously brings it up both in Family Guy and when presenting at the Oscars. Years before Me Too. Roger Beaujolais, engineer involved with the Space Shuttle program, who warned his superiors for months prior to the Challenger disaster that launching in cold weather could cause the O-rings to fail. Care to guess what caused the Challenger disaster? I've heard that he refused to sign the launch orders for the doomed mission. Even told his wife the night before, they're going to blow up the shuttle tomorrow. The weather that morning was unreal. It had been well below freezing overnight. There were literally icicles on the shuttle. Even a 24-hour postponement would have been enough. I saw him talking about it in This Day in History. The PR people in charge of NASA were adamant the launch go ahead because Reagan had a speech to give that night. French General Ferdinand Foch reportedly called the Treaty of Versailles 20-year armistice, i.e. not conducive to lasting peace. World War II broke out approximately 20 years later. Otto von Bismarck in the 1880s, I believe, said that when the Great European War came, it would come out of some damn foolish thing in the Balkans. Jenna came 20 years after the death of Frederick the Great. The crash will come 20 years after my departure if things go on like this. Bismarck, who departed 20 to 24 years before WW1 broke out. Depending on your view of what counts as departing government. IARC, the American president at the time, was planning to fight hard against it and have it amended to be less harsh on the Germans, but ended up doing a 180 in France. Wilson had a stroke and was ineffective for the rest of his presidency. That is probably why the 180 happened. Without Wilson at 100%, France and England got the harsh treaty they asked for. Ignaz Semmelweis, often described as the father of hand washing. In the 1800s he discovered that infant maternal mortality could be drastically reduced by doctors washing their hands between patients. He was largely ignored and his book got absolutely slated. This is supposed to have contributed to him having a mental breakdown, and he died in a psychiatric hospital. Not just between patients, between working on cadavers and delivering babies. How are kids in today's world supposed to grow strong immune systems if they're not immersed in rotting putrid flesh the moment they're pulled out of the womb? We're breeding the human race to be weak. Life was much better when we'd have 14 kids and only 5 would live to adulthood. Absolutely mind-boggling. It makes me think about what kinds of things that we do now that in 200 years people will be like, WTF were they thinking? Using plastic and then carelessly throwing it away. Making clothes with plastic. Probably a lot of people still not washing their hands when they should. President George Washington, in his address when leaving office, he warned against the danger of a two-party system in future politics. He felt that several parties on equal footing would be better, especially in presidential elections. The more legitimate choices, the better. Eisenhower and the military-industrial complex too. One of my favorite speeches by a U.S. president. Every gun that is made, every warship launched, every rocket fired signifies, in the final sense, a theft from those who hunger and are not fed, those who are cold and are not clothed. This world in arms is not spending money alone. It is spending the sweat of its laborers, the genius of its scientists, the hopes of its children. The cost of one modern heavy bomber is this: a modern brick school in more than 30 cities. It is 2 electric power plants, each serving a town of 60,000 population. It is 2 fine, fully equipped hospitals. It is some 50 miles of concrete pavement. We pay for a single fighter with 500,000 bushels of wheat. We pay for a single destroyer with new homes that could have housed more than 8,000 people. This is not a way of life at all. In any true sense. Under the cloud of threatening war, it is humanity hanging from a cross of iron. Rick Rescorla, director of corporate security for Morgan Stanley Dean Witter, published a report in 1990 detailing the vulnerability of the World Trade Center parking garage. He and a colleague found they were able to freely walk into the garage, which contained many structural support columns, unchallenged by any security. Additionally, no ID checks or screening was done on any of the entering delivery vehicles. 3 years later, a truck bomb was driven into the garage and detonated in an attempt to damage the building's structure. Later, he and his same college would correctly predict the next attack on the building would come from the air. The evacuation plan and drills he put in place are credited with saving over 2,600 lives on September 11. Rick died helping get people out on 9/11. One of the last people to see him said, "You need to get out too." He said something like, "I will." But he didn't make it. I worked for Morgan Stanley then, but in Houston. I had colleagues in the towers that day, including my best friend. Watching the towers fall on TV, we thought there's no way everyone made it out. But all my local people made it out. Of 3,800 Mega Siemens employees at World Trade, just 13 perished thanks to crazy luck and Rick. He's a goddamn hero. I'll never forget him. He ran his own safety drills until people knew them by heart. The impression I got reading about him afterwards was that people thought him well-meaning but a bit loony. Hell of a way to be proven right. May he rest in peace. He died during the attacks of September 11, 2001, going back to help evacuate more people in the South Tower after he had organized the evacuation of the Morgan Stanley offices. https://en.m.wikipedia.org/wiki/Rick_Rescorla